Hi, everyone. Welcome to RIoT's virtual event. This is Caroline Griffin, Events and Operations Manager for RIoT. Um, Rachel Newberry will be leading this discussion today. And so without further ado, I will let her get this started.
Thank you, Caroline. Welcome, everybody. This is one in a series of live webinars that RIoT is hosting. My name is Rachel Newberry. I'm your host for today. I am RIoT's program director, so I run our innovation programs, primarily the RIoT Accelerator program. We're really fortunate to have Adam Covati, Jim Smith, and Marcus Aman join us today. Before we get started, just to introduce RIoT, if you're not familiar with us, RIoT is an economic development nonprofit focused on sector growth in the Internet of Things. So we are supporting businesses, large and small, move into the data economy and take advantage of the business opportunities that IoT presents. We do a lot of convening, so this is our effort to adapt to this new reality that we live in. And during this pandemic, we're holding lots of virtual events. So thanks for joining us virtually. And we also run the Startup Accelerator program as a formal way to support up and coming companies. And we have a sponsor ecosystem of over 80 corporate partners that we support in various ways. Thanks for joining us today. We are here to talk about success stories during this COVID-19 situation. So we want to focus on the positive here. We've got three awesome representatives from Klarrio, Bandwidth, and ShyftAuto joining us today to talk about the exciting things that they are doing during this pandemic. We want to focus on the positive things during this time. And so we're looking forward to getting into a discussion today about some interesting and successful things that are happening in our startup community. So to get us started, I want to thank our sponsors, of course. These are our 80 or so sponsoring partners of RIoT. They make everything that we do possible, so we appreciate all of their support. This is a panel discussion today. If you're joining us virtually, your microphones are muted. There, of course, we'll have some time at the end to go over any audience questions. So feel free to use the chat window online, and Caroline will monitor that for us. We will start with a moderated discussion that I will lead with our three panelists. And this session will be recorded, and we're posting these live webinars on our YouTube page. That's another place you can follow us and all the things that we're doing during this virtual time. All right, so let's jump in today. Our topic is creativity amidst crisis. So we're looking at awesome stories from entrepreneurs in our region and how they're taking on the challenges that COVID-19 has presented. So today with us, we have Adam Covati from Bandwidth, Jim Smith with Klarrio, and Marcus Aman from ShyftAuto to share about what their companies are doing during this time. To get us started, Jim, Marcus, and Adam, I'm going to have you introduce yourselves just briefly, and then we'll jump into our questions. So Jim, let's start with you.
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me? All right, sounds good. Yeah, my name is Jim Smith, the co-founder of Klarrio US, formerly IBMer, longtime IBMer. I ran emerging technologies IBM JSTART team. I was a chief architect on that team for many, many years. We had the opportunity to actually found Klarrio US, and our objective is really to help customers become more data-driven. We saw a need where customers were struggling to really understand data, and certainly understand data when it's in motion. And that's really what Klarrio focuses on, is to bring those business decisions closer to when the event actually occurs.
Thanks so much, Jim. Adam, let's move over to you.
Sure. Yeah. Hi there. I'm Adam Covati from Bandwidth. At Bandwidth, I focus on new tech and innovation and introducing new revenue opportunities previous to this, I started a company called Argyle Social. We raised around 1.5 million and eventually sold that to Teradata. Quick version.
Awesome. Thank you, Adam. And Marcus, introduce yourself.
Yep, my name's Marcus Aman. I worked in the automotive industry for 12 plus years, managing service departments. And we have a company called ShyftAuto that is offering pickup and return for vehicle service for independent service facilities as well as dealerships. And that's who we are.
Awesome. Thanks, Marcus. Great. So we're here today to talk about success stories during COVID-19. Before we really dig in, let's make sure our audience understands each of your companies. So Marcus, let's start with you again. I work with startups every day, and finding early revenue is extremely hard work. During a global pandemic like this, it's near impossible. So tell us when you launched ShyftAuto and what problem you solved and what stage the company was at when this crisis first hit.
Yep. Okay, so we launched our company after we had run a successful pilot at the end of February. So we launched the company the end of February so we could go out and start selling it to other facilities. And, you know, then obviously COVID hit us right in the middle of the face there. So we had to try to figure out, you know, what we were going to do, you know, and luckily for us, I mean, we hadn't thought about a pandemic with our solution, right? So we had two options. I mean, we could have run and hid and hoped that things would change for us, or we could have fight our way out of the pandemic, you know, the negativity around it as well, you know. So we were looking at, you know, what we could do and going out and launching and at the end of February, we didn't have a ton of leads. So kind of what happened with COVID for us was it forced service facilities to try to offer a pickup and return solution to their customers because they did deem pickup and they did deem vehicle service as an essential business. So it's forced them to interact with their consumers in that manner. And we just happened to build the solution for that and started building that solution 2 years ago. So it kind of fell into our lap on that portion of it. We're very fortunate of that because there's a lot of startups that is going the opposite way for. But that's kind of how it's happened for us. And we've had a lot of success. We've signed up a lot of dealerships since COVID. And we've also, you know, even have partners coming to us at this point that's looking for solutions for their facilities. So, you know, we're staying positive and we're just moving forward.
Great, thanks, Marcus. Yeah, I remember when the COVID crisis first hit. You know, we were about 4 weeks into our current cohort of the RIoT Accelerator program, which Marcus and ShyftAuto are participating in. And they had just started to really heavily push forward on sales. So it was a really interesting time, to say the least, I'm sure, to start to, you know, get out there and sell the solution. But Marcus and his team have really kept driving and had some good success come from that. So thanks for the details, Marcus. Adam, Bandwidth is in a much different position, being nearly 2 decades old and having successfully IPO'd. Help our listeners understand Bandwidth technology offerings a bit more and how they connect with the COVID-19 situation that we're currently in.
Sure, happy to do that. So Bandwidth is an API provider that owns and operates a tier 1 network in North America for voice, messaging, and 911. Some of you might be familiar with Twilio. We're kind of like that, except we have our own enterprise grade network as well that includes 911. And we actually power a lot of like phone dial-ins and SIP connectivity for offerings, as well as 911 actually for some of them, for offerings like Zoom, Microsoft Teams, WebEx, 8x8, RingCentral, several different Google offerings, and a whole host more. So you can imagine we're seeing a lot of traffic and growth right now. I mean, our network typically carries a lot of concurrent calls and a lot of total overall minutes and messages, but it's grown dramatically. And so it's critically important for our customers that we maintain high quality availability as they serve their businesses. And a lot of those businesses have gone remote, right? And a lot of schools have gone remote and are leveraging tools like Zoom for that. And a lot of communities, even, you know, people like neighborhoods and stuff, still connecting with friends and family and neighbors through tools like Zoom or Hangouts or other types of technology. They've really been forced to change their habits. And a lot of that is driven over networks like bandwidth. And so for us, it's been critical that we expand capacity, that we expand our relationship with our partners, and that really at the end of the day, we provide stable telecommunications capabilities for our customers because they really just have so much to worry about already. And on top of that, we're still powering a 911 network for over 10 million endpoints across North America. And so again, another critical feature that needs to be capable. So we really made sure that during this time that we focus on stability and profitability as a company that recently went public and had been until that time profitable. And it's just important that we continue to do so so that our customers knew that they could depend on us. And that was really a big thing for us, was to maintain that place where they didn't have to worry. And in fact, we were someone who was helping them through these difficult times.
Adam, I'm just curious, how has the transition been with, I'm sure bandwidth employees have transitioned to working remote, but at the same time, you're supporting this customer base and seeing a lot more activity with your solutions. How have y'all navigated that?
Well, one of the things is a lot of the meetings like this, you know, I think we were earlier talking about, we turn on video as much as possible to be able to see each other. But we also try to get creative. So I lead up the innovation team. We actually built a new app on top of our recently launched WebRTC offering. And it's actually right now audio only, but it actually simulates being in a office with other people. And so people, when your mic's not always hot, but you can start a conversation with someone, and other people in the room can actually hear you off in the background, and they can choose to join your conversation, and the volume comes up. And I bring this up because it's about how do we continue to provide that office experience of involvement with people, serendipitous conversation engagement, and just general human touch that you don't get when you only interact with people during scheduled meetings. And things like that are important to think about. So it's oftentimes not about the prescribed what do you do, but what else can you do to make sure that you're still engaging and connecting with people.
Awesome. Very cool to hear you're also spinning up solutions to simulate that office environment too with your team.
Yeah, thanks.
Awesome. So Jim, you recently launched a new initiative, and we'll get into that in more detail later, but first tell us more about Klarrio.
So Klarrio largely is a system integrator focused on data and data engineering and data analytics. Has our business changed significantly? The way we do business development seems to be changing. You know, we have to really leverage our network and our existing client base. We're really fortunate to have some large telecom providers, and obviously they're very busy right now, as Adam just kind of mentioned. And so we're busy helping them. And then we're also heavily involved in healthcare. And so our healthcare clients have come back to us with new type of analytics to say, hey, can we detect other things in the data that we have to make us more aware of the situation at hand? And so we're trying to help the customers we have, and then finding new ways to reach out within our networks and grow those networks of new client opportunities.
Awesome. Any projects you want to share? We'll get into your PPE initiative soon, but any projects that are Klarrio-centric to your typical business that you want to share about?
Yeah, I mean, we've got a couple that we've been with for a long time. One of them is formerly known as Dutch Telecom. Now it's known as KPN, and the large telecom provider. They had a vision a number of years ago. They were very forward-thinking, and they had the vision of, we really want to become a data-driven organization. And so the way they did that is through a platform that we built was largely to ingest all the traffic data across the Netherlands. They've now internalized that, and they're using that across their organization to share and collaborate on real time on the same data sets. I'm sure we've all seen cases where we have lots of different spreadsheets. Adam has version 1, I have version 2, Rachel, you have version 3, and they're all out of sync, right? But we're making real business decisions based on these. So what we're trying to do is lower that barrier for entry, give a technology stack that gives secure data to the right person at the right time.
Very cool. That's awesome. Marcus, I want to circle back to you. Your business almost by accident had this social distancing component. Did you do anything different with your sales approach as COVID-19 hit, and what have you learned so far?
Yeah, that's a great question, Rachel. So yeah, we hadn't thought about software prior to COVID as being a social distancing component, although it prevents the consumer from visiting a service facility, and it gives the service facility a little more time to service the car and do it right, get it back to you. However, when COVID-19 hit, we were going out to dealerships and service facilities and selling our software solution to them in a less empathetic way. We were just sell, get as many sales as you can get, to try to grow our company. But after COVID hit, we realized from talking to service facilities and dealerships that we needed to be a little more empathetic in our approach. And that may come with offering 30 days free, those type of things to kind of help them during this period of time, because we are a solution that helps the service facility when consumers don't want to drive in, right? So our solution gives them that option to offer to their customers, and instead of us being so salesy about it, we just went to dealerships and service facilities to say, hey, listen, we're here to help you during this time. What can we do to help? And listen to their concerns. So using that approach has allowed us to add more service facilities. But prior to that, we didn't realize that our solution may be a social distancing solution, because social distancing is a word that has appeared in the last few months here. So.
Absolutely. Oh, that's great. Jim, you had a bit of a different path. So clearly you're still driving business with the streaming data services you provide, but you all have decided to launch a specific side project to support the healthcare effort. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, it was interesting. So I mentioned before, we have a lot of expertise in healthcare. So we know a lot of the physicians, we know a lot of the folks on the front line, and we work and we build solutions for those folks. So on kind of a whim, I printed out a face shield, which now I'm sure everybody has seen these face shields across the world. We were pretty early to the game, mainly because we have Belgian counterparts. We're partially owned by a Belgian group, and we saw what was happening in Europe, and we were paying very close attention to it. So we probably had a couple weeks head start. So I printed out a headband for a face shield and sent a text message to an ER doc and said, by any chance, would you need something like this? And I expected them to come back and say, no, thanks. We've got a bunch of those in the storeroom. We're good. Well, I got an immediate response back that said, yes, definitely. And they said, make as many as you can. And I'm like, are you for real? Or is this serious? And they're like, yeah. They said, here's the requirements. Make them disposable, make them inexpensive, and make them where you can build them very quickly. So we set down that path, and actually I reached out to RIoT. We're a member of RIoT. I knew a lot of startups were members of RIoT, and as Adam said, they're innovators. And so I knew that these guys that had the 3D printers lived in this community. And so through Zach Vernside and Adam, and there's a variety of other folks that have jumped in, we found the maker community that was right there in our backyard. And we iterated on a design. We started with a design that took 2.5 hours to build, just to fabricate the headband. We iterated on that, got it down to under an hour. So we can print one of these things in less than an hour. We actually have one guy that is just phenomenal. He's tuned all the parameters around his machine. I think he's making one every 13 minutes. So he can pump one of these headbands out, and it meets the spec, and we've shipped every one. It's fantastic. But the thing to take away is that, I can only make so many of these. I can make maybe 12 or 15 in a day, and you've got to really babysit the machines, and you start to have machine failures, which we're experiencing now. But in a community, when we got a bigger set of folks, we can pump out maybe 50 or 75 of these headbands a day. And so we can have a much larger impact. So a couple things, if you just look at the vibrant community we have, startup community in Raleigh and Durham, I would claim it's one of the best in the world, right? We have people that jump in head first, and they ask really good questions, and it's just a phenomenal experience. So they thank me for giving them the opportunity. I thank them for giving me the opportunity to work with them, and it's just a phenomenal group. And I think you guys deal with it every day. I deal with it on the periphery, but it's just a phenomenal group here in Raleigh and Durham.
Yeah, we're certainly fortunate to have such an ecosystem that's willing to help and jump in and innovate just on the fly. It was cool for us to see, late night messages coming through on our RIoT Slack community about gathering support for this face shield printing project. And I know Ava Labs, which is a startup that we supported, was among the first to jump in and help Jim. So we love what y'all are doing. And if you'd like to get involved, we can certainly make connections, anyone on the line. So let us know. You're delivering right now to the Durham and the Fayetteville VA, Jim, is that right?
Yeah, actually the big need initially were facilities, the Durham VA facility, and that's where we started the initiative, and we delivered 250 or so face shields to them. And then we learned kind of as we just got started that all of a sudden Fayetteville had a couple days supply of face shields. And so they're like, immediately, we need to split the order and send half to Fayetteville and half to Durham. We did that, and then the community really stepped up. And I think we shipped 40 the first week. We shipped 250 to Fayetteville, and then 200 to Durham the following week. And we're on schedule now. I think there's a pickup at Bandwidth, and we'll probably ship out this week a couple hundred more. But we're seeing the need shift from these larger facilities to these smaller elder care facilities and things of that nature that they don't have the stock of PPE. So we're trying to figure out ways to get smaller caches of supplies to those many more facilities. So that's posing a different challenge for us.
Right. Great. Well, thanks for the update. Adam, where has Bandwidth's approach fallen? Are you closer to Marcus with the kind of empathetic sales adjustment, or more towards Jim where they've started major new initiatives?
Well, I'm loving that Bandwidth has been able to take part and help. We've got a lot of tinkerers and people like that. So the 3D printing channel on our Slack has been out of control, and and they've been loving it, jumping on printing as much as possible, which is really cool. But Bandwidth as a whole, it's been much more about adapting and evolving with these than new major initiatives. Like I said before, companies love that we're solid and dependable. We weather storms, and so that both metaphorically and physically. We try to really just be stable and provide more of what we can. But for us, there has been a lot of changes. Things like conferences and on-site visits are really a big part of how we interact with customers, how we work deals and maintain relationships. And so for us, for example, Enterprise Connect's one of the biggest conferences of the year for us, and it was going to be canceled, and then they ended up delaying it until August. We'll see if that happens. And so, we've had to be creative about things like a bunch of swag that we had that we were going to use to get new customers. So our marketing team came up with a really creative thing that they did on LinkedIn around giving away a bunch of teleponies that we had, which they might still have some left if people are interested. Things like we do quarterly business reviews and moving those to virtual. That's been important, and not just going virtual, but then also kind of, how do we make sure we still instill this white glove hands-on approach? Part of that is being constantly available through channels like Slack for our customers, because availability is really important for them. They're running mission critical services on top of us, and so if some blip hits, they want to reach out right away, and they don't want to send an email or open a ticket and wait 5 or 10 minutes or longer. They want to be able to know that someone will respond. And so that's been important. We even did war room meetings with some of our biggest customers, because for us, some of we get a lot of customers coming back and bringing more services, like Google, who runs many services with us. When they have a new project that requires telephony or messaging or things like that, they come to us first oftentimes. And so being available, being proactive, and having these war room meetings where you say, how's your growth going today? Are you seeing any blips, any issues? What can we do? Where do you think you're going to see other stuff coming up? That's been really important. And marketing wise, that's a big area for us too. We've started to do a lot more virtually, just like you guys have, amped up our webinar schedule, and really looking ahead to say, like, what changes will be permanent? What other changes will continue to happen? And how can we try to get ahead and adapt to that new normal? And I really like what Marcus said about empathy. That's been really important for us. Early on, we had a lot of discussions about, should we send things to people, and then, or are people really hesitant to receive a package right now? So maybe just letting them know we're there, but staying out of their hair because everybody's really busy. And especially early on for the West Coast, this was much more of a reality than it was for the East Coast. People were really kind of making it light of it on the East Coast, and we have a lot of West Coast customers. We have some folks who actually live a couple miles from where the outbreak was at the nursing home in Seattle area, I think it was. They were like really early on, they're like, guys, this is really hard for people. Like, don't bother them if they're busy. And so I think it's about gauging your customer, understanding their state of mind, and making sure you interact properly. Do they really need you right now, or do they want you out of the way, but just know you're there if you need them? And trying to be aware of that, and not just kind of busting in and just thinking it's business as usual. And so that's been important, both on the support, the sales, and the technological side, making sure we provide that right level of engagement and being kind of having your finger on the pulse of the companies you're working with.
Great. Yeah, and RIoT has had to do a lot of the similar work around just adapting to the new normal, meeting our partners where they're at. We sort of fallen a bit in the middle. On the one hand, we're just evolving our typical offerings. So the events that we run, we're doing virtually now. We just launched our virtual Lunch and Learn series yesterday. RAP, the accelerator program, has had to go entirely virtual, but we've seen great success with that, which is exciting. And then we've done some on the new initiative side, like launching our Mission Hour project, which we're excited to be able to announce some updates on that soon. But we're jumping in with projects that we're supporting immediately and actually getting started with them later this afternoon. So yeah, it's been an interesting time, and I think everyone's just trying to figure it out as we go. But it's cool to see companies like you all, adapting, but doing new things to support the community as well. Adam, I mean, for example, it seems like the world is staying in operation because of the connectivity tools that you all provide, which is hugely valuable and a lot of work. But on top of that, you all made a major expansion announcement last week. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, we're really excited about that. Our CEO, David Morgan, hasn't been secretive at all about the fact that he's wanted a space that we can call our own and have a lot of freedom. We're currently on Centennial Campus, which we absolutely love. It's great to be kind of in the heart of Raleigh, but have Greenway and stuff like that. But we've been growing like crazy. We're in 3 different buildings there right now. We also have offices in Denver and Rochester, but we've always known that North Carolina is like our forever home. We love it here. Just a lot of people just absolutely love being in North Carolina. And so we wanted to continue that growth here. And they've actually been looking for a while to find a spot. And we found a spot. We're able to start the process of purchasing land for that. And we're going to have, I think, the growth over the next few years is supposed to be impressive. I think they said around 1,165 new jobs over the next, I think it's 10 years or so, 8 years. Awesome. We're able to get a JDIG grant for that as well, which is fantastic. And I think that's important. As we look at the post-COVID world, there's a lot of companies that may not make it through this. And that stress is hard for people. And so Bandwidth wants to hire and grow and really support our people here. And I think that's fantastic. And so we really want to reinvest. And, an interesting side note on that is that a lot of companies, when they try to get some of these like initiative or kind of incentives from the state, they oftentimes say, well, we're looking at moving over here or moving over here. I think the Amazon HQ2 thing comes to mind for how they made all these states bid against each other. And Bandwidth didn't take that tack. We up front were saying we want to grow in North Carolina, but we want to work with North Carolina and do it in a way that makes sense. So we've always been a very upfront, straightforward company. That makes me really proud to work for them. And that's one of the things where I'm really excited that we're continuing to grow here. It's going to be really cool, but it's been really exciting as someone who describes themselves as a startup guy. It's been really interesting to be part of an IPO process in a growing company and see that it can be done in a way that it can still be enjoyable for startup people, because I certainly chafe at big company rules. So it's interesting.
Awesome. Well, we're really excited to see the growth and expansion in this area for you all too. Marcus, so it seems like your business, you're finding ways to continue to drive revenue for yourself. But much like Bandwidth, your product is also helping other enterprises to do business in a new way during this crisis, which is really cool to see. So tell us how some of your customers are benefiting.
Yeah, sure. So we have this 2-sided problem we're solving, right? So having your car serviced is a real pain in the butt. And then on the other end, service facilities, really struggle with their retention and revenue, driving customers back to them and increasing the revenue, as they move forward at growing in a company. So, with our solution, it's helping dealerships and service facilities actually generate more revenue because the convenience factor, right? Consumers are willing to part ways with more money because they're not sitting there, waiting in your lobby and eating your popcorn and drinking your Starbucks out of your coffee machine. So it helps you with some of those things. But also, too, the bigger picture is the retention piece. It's helping them retain their customers long term because it's giving them the ability to offer a service that maybe their competitor doesn't offer. And ideally, consumers, if you look at companies like Instacart and DoorDash and Grubhub and all of those companies offer convenience to consumers. And whether the facility wants to charge for a pickup or they want to offer it free, they could do that either way. But the point is they're offering that type of convenience for their customer, and it's giving them the ability to retain their customer and then also generate a little bit of more profit by doing that. So it's very beneficial for them. We're also using data in many different ways. We're going to use data for the location, traffic data, how to get to routes faster. We've built service bay timers that go on the lifts of the service lifts that track how fast the technician's doing a job, so that it can, you could use a bunch of data from that. But yeah, we're helping make service centers smarter at the same time. We do have this awesome pick-up and return solution, but we're helping make service facilities smarter too.
Awesome. Yeah, cool. So Marcus and Jim, it's been great to see that your companies have been able to still drive success during COVID-19. But at the same time, both of you are running smaller businesses that are need to stay operational during this kind of financially stressful time. Have either of you applied to the payroll protection plan stimulus effort? And if so, what has that experience been like?
We have not. So Klarrio has not. We're very careful about any kind of debt we take on. We're a profitable company, even though we're only 3 years old. And we pride ourselves in that. And on one side, it limits the growth, but it sets us up for events like this where we can weather the storm a little bit better, right? We don't have those huge loans hanging over our head. So we're really fortunate for that. And we're actually hiring. So, we're always looking for great candidates, and we've got new opportunities. And, if anybody is looking for a job, hit me up on LinkedIn or she knows how to get a hold of me.
Great. That's awesome. Marcus, any thoughts?
Yeah, so we haven't really applied for that yet. I don't know that we will. We have a lot of 1099 employees that really they have to file on their own. After going through all the documents, and you got to be careful. Thank God, RIoT, you've put on or had some guests, especially with Cherry Baker, who had some great information on the payroll protection program. But for our company, we have a lot of 1099 employees, so it really wouldn't benefit us that much. And to Jim's point, we are a new startup, so we have to be careful what type of debt that we take on at this point. Even though they say it might be forgivable in the future, or it is, at this point in our mission, we're looking to become profitable as fast as possible, and taking on any future debt at this point may not be a great idea.
Yeah, I know it's been a difficult decision for a lot of companies. We've had several conversations with small businesses and startups about just how to navigate that whole process. So I was curious.
So I'm sorry, Rachel, but there's also a lot of conflicting information out there about that too. I mean, you hear one thing from someone, and then the banks will tell you something different. So thank God Cherry Baker gave us that information, the right information. So that was good.
Great, I'm glad to hear that. So a question for all of you: what advice do you have for other business owners right now? What have you maybe learned as you navigate this time and the current challenges that would allow you to pass on some advice to others?
If I'll go first. I think it's the power of the community. So we have an extremely vibrant community, as we've demonstrated today. Don't be afraid to leverage that. I think more and more, even though we're disconnected, I think people want to be connected. So, I find it pretty easy to reach out to folks, or through your network, find a connection and have a conversation with somebody. So I think, leverage that community that we have in the Raleigh-Durham area, because people are willing to talk, especially if you're local. It's an easy conversation starter.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And for me, I think it's also about looking, coming back to something that Marcus said before. I agree with being empathetic, looking at the pain points of your customers, and trying to understand, what problems they're having, even if they're only somewhat tangential to your business. You could still potentially add value there and help. And just be ready and available for your customers. They're looking for more people to make their lives easier, not to give them something more to do in the time of crisis. So it's not the right time to say, well, you do this entirely new thing, but can I help you make that part of your life easier? And think about ways that you can provide shortcuts to getting them going faster that make it just easier for them, especially now. That can be really valuable. And the difference between them doing it and not can be, pretty significant.
That's great.
I think one thing to add to what Adam said is, you have to look at the business that your customers who you currently have and who the future customers that you're going after, and look at what challenges they're facing now, and it may not be what your product does currently. You have to look at those things and decide whether or not you should pivot, or you should try to offer some type of help, because there's a lot of people that I've talked to that have startups that are kind of up in the air. They're not sure what they're going to do, and just trying to stay positive during the whole thing, and because there is a light at the end of the tunnel. It's not going to last forever, but you have to remain positive. One of the quick example of something that we've done for one of our customers was, they're really struggling just getting customers, period, into their service facilities. So we went in and pulled out a recall list. This is something that we normally do not do at all, but they had a bunch of customers that had recalls. So we grabbed those recalls and we emailed them for them, and drove in a ton of business for them right away. And that's something that during this period of time, we feel like we should do for every business. But there's opportunity even during the worst times, and you just have to stay positive and continue to look for it.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for those thoughts. And I'll add, just in the interest of kind of quickly supporting the community where we can, with the Mission R initiative that we're launching, we actually originally had planned to matriculate projects into our summer cohort of the RIoT Accelerator program, but we got so many awesome applications and just really cool projects that were already driving forward. And so we were, motivated to see how we could support as immediately as possible. So we're actually moving into, effective now, a 6-week project sprint with some Mission R projects. So we're excited to share what these folks are working on with our community more broadly very soon. And as I mentioned earlier, we're kicking off those projects today. So we're looking forward to keeping you updated. But there's a lot of just awesome, incredible work going on in this entrepreneurship community. And Adam, Marcus, and Jim, you all are a testament to that as well. So thanks so much for joining us. So I'm going to open the floor for some audience questions. Caroline, have we gotten anything through on the chat window that you'd like to share?
Hey, thanks, Rachel. We do have a couple of questions. This one is directed to Jim. Jim, it's great to hear about the marriage of the IoT and health industries. IoT is already being used to assist the aging baby boomer population. What do you think will be the future of this marriage across the general population in the next 2 to 5 years?
Yeah, we do a lot in sports analytics. So I think, you talked to the question was focused towards connected kind of health type initiatives. And I think that is going to be larger. We're seeing telemedicine now become the norm, right? People don't want to go into the facility. So I think IoT is only going to play a bigger part across the health ecosystem, The sports analytics, we do a lot in sports analytics. We've done a number of major Olympic teams, analyzing their performance and helping them improve. So I think across the board, that's an intersection of, getting the data, so the IoT aspect, and then taking that data and turning it into information. And so I think we're going to see more and more. I think there's going to be more opportunities. We're already seeing those. People are asking questions around viruses they weren't asking, 6 weeks ago.
I think just to add something on there as well, you ask about what it's going to be like the next 2 to 5 years. I think we've got this, I don't want to call it a storm, but this kind of brewing questions that need to be answered about how there's several different groups of people, some who are all for this, some who are totally against it, and then a lot who are in the middle in terms of the data. There's the possibility to say if you were infected, I think they've talked about Apple and Android working on things to look at Bluetooth connectivity of phones you were near and telling all those people that you were near a person who had this, and then everybody else is, then there's a lot of people saying, well, who's tracking you now? And I think we need to get to a better place in terms of understanding how that data is collected, what you do with it, and things like GDPR kind of help start that conversation, but they don't answer all those questions. And so I think, that there's more and more of this every day. I just ordered a scale, that you weigh yourself on for like $24, I think it was, that takes 8 different measurements from Wise, the people who do the cameras. And so the prices on these things are coming way down. They're going to be all over the place, which is great news in so many respects, but it will require us to rethink how we manage all that. And I think there's a huge opportunity for that as we move into this area.
Guys, this question again is for Jim. Is there an official 3D printer consortium of sorts? Do you know?
What I'm aware of, there are a lot of groups, a lot of loosely connected groups. Maybe we've started something and we don't even know about it. So I have to talk to Adam about that because he's been managing a lot of the makers. But no, I mean, there's a lot of Facebook groups. I am not aware of just a consortium. Adam, maybe you have an awareness of that.
No, me neither. It kind of made me wonder, almost like one of these kind of compute cloud things, but it's like a print cloud.
Yeah.
I haven't seen anything go to that level, but there's certainly some more rigor that could be brought to. Currently, I'm just spamming a Slack group a lot.
So, we're using old school tools here.
Yeah. So it seems to be working, but I do think that'd be really cool because it would have been nice to just tap a group and say, like, here's the latest model and see thousands of things roll in. I think there's some ways to look forward to that in the future, because unfortunately, this isn't the first time this will happen. This isn't the last time this will happen, right? So
I will just Adam mentioned the model. So we do have a very unique model that we used. It was actually designed by a gentleman at PhaseDoc. I think the CTO of PhaseDoc did the redesign for us based on some work we did. And that is open source. So you can get the model and you can get the mesh file and you can print it yourself. We've had some interest as far as the Netherlands. There's a high school student in the Netherlands that I think was printing some of these. Ours has a very unique attachment point to hold the shield in place. And that is available. All the information about the project is available at faceshield.Klarrio, Klarrio.us. And so if you go there, you'll find all the information. You'll find my email address if you want to ask questions or get in contact with us.
Awesome. Thanks, Jim. Caroline, anything else from the audience?
We had a question. Is there a place to get the correct 3D printer settings for the headband?
Yes. So go to faceshield.Klarrio.us. We have a maker page. I think it's maker contributors. I'm trying to get to it real quick. Yeah, I think it's the makers. Yeah, makers page. In there, you'll find a little bit of information about how we set up. There are some problems with bed adhesion. Again, this 3D printer consortium might have been helpful. We talk about things like using Aquanet hairspray to try to get them to stick. And so we had a lot of ideas floating around. But anyways, all that information is on faceshield.Klarrio.us, as well as all the companies that have contributed into this.
Thanks so much, Jim. One question, this one's directed to Adam. Isn't what Apple and Android did together supposed to be a secure encrypted pi-blinded solution?
Good question. And I think it may be, I think, to be fair, Apple's one of the better companies out there in terms of taking a stance on data and things like that. But I think my point is more to the broad part of, this is a broadening of data that's being used. It's great that we're using more data and more technology to not do kind of brute force or anecdotal learnings in the medical field. They already do a lot of peer research and stuff like that. But if you look at medical devices in general, they're actually one of the biggest contributors to malware and spam, because things like heart monitors and stuff like that actually run web servers on them so they can communicate with other systems, and they're constantly actually being attacked. And we've actually seen hospitals be big producers of spam emails because they're oftentimes not upgraded and they don't take security very seriously. And so we just have to think about that world as one that has to grow up all together and decide how they want to deal with data broadly and how they want to deal with security more broadly and come up with best practices around that. And I think there's a huge opportunity to grow and improve. And I think companies like Apple may lead the way. They already have with things like the Apple Watch, and that's really taken seriously as a health device. And it's time for tech companies that in the past have just focused on hardware to understand that there's a broader world and they can't just focus on the device itself. It's like looking at the menu on your TV. That's always been some of the worst human computer interaction around, because they don't take software seriously. They just think it's a hardware device and they have to put a little bit of software on it to make it work. And the companies that are winning are those who integrate Roku, because they realize oh, this is actually an important part of the TV. And so I think that kind of a change is going to happen on things like medical or other health devices. They recognize that the experience and the security of the data now becomes more important than the hardware, because the hardware becomes commodity and China can copy any hardware out there. So.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, we get called in all the time, and I think the tables have turned now very quickly, where we used to get that this project's too important for security. And, a lot of times we pass on those projects. We want to build security from the ground up. It's much easier to do. It's much easier to do correctly. We don't have to kind of reinvent the wheel after, a year of the solution running. So I think we're going to find where people are more concerned about security and then data privacy, and they take it seriously. And we're going to see the solutions actually incorporate those features earlier, rather than have the problem that Adam described.
So much, guys. I just wanted to read this one comment from Mark B, because I'm sure all of us can agree. He said, "Great presentations, and I appreciate the positivity and creativity."
Absolutely. Yeah, it's been great to see some friendly faces from the Riot community and to hear positive stories about what companies are doing to navigate the challenges during COVID-19, but also continue to just meet their customers where they're at and provide good value. So Jim, Adam, and Marcus, thank you so much for joining us today. To end on a positive note, to keep with our theme today, I've got one more lightning question for you all, and let's see if you can answer it in, say, 5 words or less. What are you most optimistic about right now?
I mean, I think we've sort of hit on it. There's a big opportunity. Things have shifted. And an opportunity, it may not have revealed itself yet, but I think if we keep our eyes open, we'll find it. So I think whether you're a startup company or you're a company like Bandwidth or even larger, there are new opportunities every day.
Great, Jim.
Yeah, I think obviously COVID's changed things. You look at sports, with the NCAA tournament being canceled and NBA seasons up in there, and it shows we've known that world for so long, and now we're living without it. And now you're like, wow, I can live without this. So it's interesting how that's changed things. Sorry that wasn't 5 words, but
that's right. We'll move it to 5 sentences or less, maybe.
I'll see if I can do 5 words, but I might do 2. The first one, probably a lot of people can relate with, which is childcare coming back. I'm optimistic that will be soon. And the second one is understanding your real value. I think in times of crisis, your customers and people will start to lean on you where you're really valuable, and other things will fade away.
a fantastic point. Great. Well, thank you all for sharing just what's going on with your companies and some kind of positive words with the group today. Everybody, thanks for joining us and convening virtually. We're glad to still be able to connect with you like this. Check out RIoT.org. This is actually our new domain. We're really excited about it. We used to be NC Riot, and now we're moving on up and we're doing things nationally and globally. So RIoT.org, you can find more information about us and upcoming events. And Caroline's email is on the screen as well if you would like to reach out about partnership or ways we can support during this time. And again, you can find this webinar posted on our YouTube page after we are done here. So thanks, everybody. Have a good one.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks,
Thank you, Rachel. Take care.